We are opening the webinar so that the attendees can now see the entire program. And I am going to turn it over to Chris.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Conway, and I'm the President and CEO of the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce, and I'd like to welcome you today, whether you are watching this live via Zoom or Facebook Live or through a recording afterward on our YouTube channel or on West Hartford Community Interactive. This is part of our Colorful Conversation series, which is hosted by the West Hartford Chamber's Minority Business Network, which was founded 5 years ago to create programming and resources for businesses in traditionally underserved demographics and communities. We are very excited to bring, as in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month, today's program. We do have a special guest with a special message that I'm going to introduce in a second. After we hear that, we are going to hear from Christopher Clark, who is both the chairperson of the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce and one of the founding members and current chairperson of the Minority Business Network. So without further ado, we do have a special message from Senator Richard Blumenthal, and we are going to watch that now as we kick off our program. So thank you very much for joining us, and I'm looking forward to a very engaging conversation with our moderator and panelists.
You can hear it.
I think we're going to try that again, just see if we can work out the audio.
Hi, I'm Richard Blumenthal, your United States Senator, and thank you, Chris and Kate, along with the Chamber's Minority Business Network, for inviting me to participate in today's conversation, kicking off Hispanic Heritage Month. I'm grateful for the West Hartford Chamber's initiative, reaching out to minority-owned businesses and organizing today's event to celebrate Hispanic heritage. It demonstrates that the Chamber understands the array of challenges, as well as obstacles, that Hispanic businesses and workers often encounter. As part of Hispanic Heritage Month, we recognize the enormous benefits and opportunities provided to our economy and our state by Hispanic-owned businesses. Your resilience and determination reflect the American spirit and reaffirm that diversity is one of our country's greatest strengths. There is still a lot of work to be done to support minority-owned businesses and entrepreneurs. I'm going to continue to work to improve access to capital, eliminate the digital divide, provide more opportunities for job training and workforce development. I look forward to continuing to work with you to fully support minority-owned businesses and ensure that they have the tools and resources necessary for success. Again, my thanks to all of you. My apologies for being stuck here in DC, but I know you understand I have to vote, and I look forward to seeing you all in Connecticut. Thanks.
So special thanks to Senator Blumenthal for that message and for his support of the Minority Business Network and the West Hartford Chamber. For those of you I have not met, I'm Chris Clark. I am the current chair of the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce. Sounds like we have a little bit of background noise, or is that me? Chairman of the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce, as well as the chair for the Minority Business Network. As Chris mentioned, the Minority Business Network was created to shine a spotlight on professionals and businesses of color, not just in West Hartford, but in the greater Hartford community and beyond. And I'll keep my comments brief, but I want to take a moment to recognize the aspirational and inspirational moderator that we have today, particularly as a father of three Latinas. Um, we have the honor of having this panel moderated by Briseda Landaverde. Uh, Many of you are familiar with Briseda. For those of you who are not, I'll do a brief introduction. Uh, She's also known as Bree and anchors the weekend edition of NBC's Connecticut News Today and reports weekday mornings, delivering the latest headlines and in-depth coverage of stories that matter most to Connecticut residents. Bree joined NBC Connecticut in 2022 as a bilingual reporter, and she brings community-first approach to her reporting, covering a wide range of topics, including education, healthcare, and diversity. She's also a frequent contributor to the station's Connecticut in Color series. Prior to joining NBC Connecticut, Bree worked in Springfield, Massachusetts, where she anchored weekend morning newscasts and helped launch a Spanish language digital news update. She began her career in Long Island as a photojournalist before transitioning to reporting. A proud New York native, I might be a little biased there. Bree earned her journalism degree from Stony Brook University, and while in college, she traveled to Cuba to report on Wi-Fi access during a rare window of ease travel restrictions, an experience that helped shape her passion for storytelling and her perspective. When she's not reporting, Bree enjoys going for walks, reading, and spending time with her family and friends. With no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Briseda Landaverde.
Oh my goodness. What a warm welcome. Thank you so much, Chris.
You're very welcome, Bree.
We have a lot in common. I'm one of three girls in my household.
Does your dad still have hair?
Um, no, I don't think so.
See, I'll share my theory later.
Okay, we'll talk.
We'll
Well,
talk.
thank you so much for the warm welcome. As Chris mentioned, I'm the weekend morning anchor at NBC Connecticut, and I report also during the morning show Wednesday through Friday. On a personal note, I'm a proud child of immigrants. Both my parents were born in El Salvador, and then they came to New York in about the 1980s or so. So they instilled in me a lot being a first generation, to be proud to be Latina, to learn the language, to not forget where our family came from, to appreciate the food. I saw firsthand from them how much they contributed to the economy, how hard they worked, how they contributed to local businesses. I also saw from family members how they started their own small businesses and the obstacles that they faced, trying to get the proper licensing, not understanding the language, not understanding the loopholes. Where do you turn to get help to open a business? So I come with that background, and I'm very proud to be here for this discussion today. It means a lot to me during Hispanic Heritage Month as we celebrate all of our Latino community across Connecticut and across the country. So, with that said, today we will focus on beyond the demographics, Hispanic contributions driving our economy, then, now, and ahead. We always have to think ahead, right? I'm sure we will talk a lot about that. So, I want to first say that our goal today is, of course, to highlight the vibrancy, our contributions to businesses, how we come together as a community, while also acknowledging, current events that are happening. Globally, right here at home, what we're watching, and just remembering when we're having these discussions that as Latinos, we are resilient. We always come back stronger. That is something that my mom definitely instilled in me, para adelante, just think ahead, don't let anything knock you down. Keep on striving. So I hope that our conversation will go like that today. And with that said, I would like to introduce the four panelists today. So first of all, and this was given to me in an order, so I'm not playing favoritisms by any means here, I'm just going in order. So we have Luis Perez, the president and CEO of Mental Health CT. We have Marjorie Brown, president and CEO of CTB Staffing. We have my colleague and friend, Carlos Brea. He's the manager of market partnerships and integrated media at NBC and Telemundo, Connecticut. A new title for Carlos, so congratulations to him. Woo! And then we have Matthew Van Ever. He's the founder of Bard's Clothing. So thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time and we can't wait to have a conversation. So let's get it started right now because we have a time frame. The first question I have is what should we know about the effects of current events by the government? So again, we want to have an open discussion. So whoever wants to kind of jump into this question and then we'll take it from there. And I'll try to keep us on time to move along the questions as well.
I guess I could start with that. That's something. Thank you, Bruseda, and thank you everybody for joining. Very excited to be here. I think that there's a few things that pop out to me when I think about it. The first thing is, I spent 25 years of my career in sales and marketing, and so one thing that sticks out is trust, right? Because trust is a cornerstone of like brands to build to grow your consumers, right? And so when that trust is broken or insecurity gets created, then like consumer behavior changes. So in current events, when you start seeing that, immigration enforcement might be done at a car wash or at a Walgreens or at the, like anywhere, it creates that insecurity. And when consumers' behavior shifts, what you start seeing is it really impacts small businesses, right? Less people going out, less people coming to the store. If you're a business in one of these immigrant communities, even more so, right? Because you depend on that group. And so when that starts happening, that's the thing that you start seeing like direct effects. And one thing I always like, I heard this before, and it's true today, is it probably true forever. When you inject problems into the Hispanic community, you're directly injecting problems into the economy. That's how it works. And so whenever we see these things, it's kind of a cautionary tale for us to keep our eyes out, because as the economy progresses, you'll start seeing those effects. And then the last thing I'll say on it, this is something that kind of sticks out to me, that in the United, according to the census, the American Community Survey that they update, 85% of Hispanics in the United States are documented, right? And 95% of people under 18, Hispanics under 18 are native born, right? So it's not to diminish the importance to support the immigrant community and whatnot, but I think in like social media and when people start engaging with things, they start painting all Hispanics as like, whether they're immigrants or criminals or whatnot. And that's not necessarily the case. On this panel alone, you could be impressed with all the Hispanic business owners, the CEOs, the politicians, all over the place. So it's something to keep in mind that I think is important to as we see coverage or as we see information come out. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add.
No, I would like to jump in on that because I agree with you. Trust is at the foundation of every relationship, whether it's with a baby and their caretaker at the very beginning. That's how you develop self-confidence, and that's how you develop trust, right? And when you start breaking down trust, it really breaks down at very different levels, not only within the nucleus of the family, but also in terms of the community, the state, the city. And when you start seeing that we talked a little bit about first generation just a little while ago before starting the conversation, now you're creating multi-generational mistrust, right? Because if parents are feeling that fear and feeling that they're not safe, their children are going to feel it as well. So from a mental health perspective, I'm very concerned about the impact that this will have, not only now, but in the future.
Add to some, oh no, so go ahead, Matthew.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. So Yeah, thank you to the chamber. Thank you, Bree. This is a great conversation. So in my business, I work with about 4 or 5 different factories that make the clothing. In the 1960s, 98% of clothing bought in America was made in America. And today, less than 3% of clothing bought in America is made in America. And most of the factories are made up of immigrants. And something that I've been facing with all of these recent deportations and ICE raids and visa complications is that the workforce is having trouble, even if they are legally here, they are having trouble staying here. I know that there are a number of instances in a couple of my different factories where people have gone home to their home countries and not been allowed back, even though they're here legally, they did all the right paperwork. So this word trust is kind of like lighting me on fire right now because it's definitely what is the point of all of this, and because at the same time there is no effort on the government's point uh, to teach the skills necessary to put people in these factories and teach them skills. Nobody in this country knows how to make anything. Nobody knows how to sew anything. Nobody knows how to do anything. So if the people who are coming here have that skill, do all the right steps, fill out the paperwork, get the job, are contributing members to society, and then you're not letting them back, and then you're not filling that seat again, that's a huge issue. And with so little clothing, and I'll just speak about the clothing perspective, with so little clothing being created in America, how can you afford? Like, it was very hard for me to even find any statistics about this because we're talking about like dozens of people, not thousands, not tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands. My factory in Rochester, 65 people. Newark, about 80 people. We're not talking about a lot of people. In Brooklyn, there's about 20 people. So it's hard to even make a statistic about it. But I know these people. I go there, I talk to them, I shake their hands, and sometimes I'll go back a couple months later and they're just not there anymore. And because of some immigration issue. And so it's astounding to me that on one point you want to say that this is to help America and create jobs. But on the other point, there's no actual creation of jobs. There's no actual creation of skill set. I mean, I'm young relatively, but I still remember home ec and all of that. And that's just gone now. And in most other countries in the world, you get taught how to sew a button, how to hem a pair of pants, how to repair your clothing, mend your clothing. And here we're just one click buy, next day ship. How do we replace it from some other country? So it's definitely creating a vacuum and definitely a trust issue.
I'm glad that you touched on that, Matt. Marjorie Brown again. I own a local staffing agency, and our niche is helping companies hire qualified bilingual speaking candidates, Spanish, right? And the issues coming aboard with visas, and stricter policies on all those things are creating those labor shortages now. So we're seeing where companies are now looking to bring on board Spanish speakers, and they can't, right? We can't, there's not enough of them. I've had positions where we needed to hire 7 bilingual people. I went through 86 candidates to find those 7 people, right? So it's becoming very tough to bring in the qualified speakers through the doors of companies that are looking to fill positions.
And I wanted to add, just like what we're seeing on the news side of stuff, like just ironically today, I happened to be reporting on ICE raids at schools. And to point out, first importantly, federal officials, they say that that's not happening here in Connecticut or across the country. So it's not happening. But to what has been mentioned about transparency and trust and how immigration issues are touching families and children. Some of schools have been reporting that they are seeing more students miss school just out of fear. And so from our side, as a reporter, we focus on like what resources, what information can we provide to the community, you know? So Governor Lamont had a press conference just informing, hey, like this is what your rights are. Essentially, you know, ICE agents can't enter a school without, you know, identification and without a warrant. But it is instilling a fear, and I think that being able to be transparent and educate the community and you know the public about what resources are available and also that it's not happening. That's important to point out that you know kids are safe to go to school, I think is an important thing, and just ties into just making sure that we are reaching all of our communities. So I just wanted to add to that because that came to mind when we were talking about trust and transparency and how it's impacting our families, our parents, and our children. Thank you, everyone, for those responses on that question. I will move to the second question. What is the biggest stereotype that you face as a business owner, and how have you overcome it?
I'm happy to jump in here because there's a couple big ones that I face. So I am a fashion designer. I make all custom clothing. And the first thing people think of when they think of custom clothing is an old white man or, you know, suits for a boardroom and definitely old Italian people sewing your clothing. I am none of those things, and I don't make any of those things. So for me, I love talking about who's actually making your clothing. People from other countries, immigrants from Turkey, from Venezuela, from Honduras, from Nicaragua, from Mexico. They're the people that are actually making our clothing. My one of my makers in Brooklyn, he is from Mexico, and he actually made the garment that Kamala Harris wore on the inauguration day, the purple jacket. And so like those are the people who are actually making the clothing. And when people come in and they talk to me about, hey, well, you know, I had this idea of all old Italian music and slow motion and old whiskey, and I'm in there just like kind of young and vibrant, young Hispanic guy. It's a little bit different for them. But then the other aspect of a stereotype is that when people do know me as being a Hispanic business owner, they start speaking to me in Spanish and say that I can, and I don't speak Spanish, and they wonder, you know, how am I talking to my the people who are making the clothing, the garment workers, and I have to talk to them about where the skill set is and how, you know, everybody outsources something in their life. And one thing for me is that, and if I need to go to the factory and talk to people, I will bring a friend or bring somebody who can communicate. And it's just something that needs to get done. So for me, stereotypes are definitely one from the industry as a whole, but two, what people think when they actually look at me in my face and know something about me.
I think that some stereotypes for my business are that companies see needing bilingual candidates as entry-level positions, right? Sometimes for just call center, sales positions, not thinking beyond that, right? Because it's more than that. We go to doctors' offices, so we need bilingual nurses. We go to law offices, we need bilingual lawyers. So all of that is, oh, so wait a minute, you can help me with that? Yes, I can. It doesn't necessarily just have to be that call center person, right? Or that person at the front desk greeting you, oh, you know, mucho gusto, gracias por venir. You know, it doesn't have to be that person right there. It is much, much deeper than that. And once companies realize that, then it is, oh my goodness, we need to hire this bilingual director. We need to hire this bilingual nurse to help our patients coming in through the doors. And so that is definitely has been one of the stereotypes that I've had to deal with on this end for sure.
Yeah, I think stereotyping has a double-edged sword, right? Because it's not only the uh, uh, mainstream culture, but it's also our subcultures. Because sometimes we have been socialized and don't understand that Latinos come in different colors. They come, from different places, and that whole idea of the tip of the iceberg, right? So don't expect that I have had the same experiences as Matthew or Carlos or Marjorie, right? Or you, Bree, because we're different people and have had different experiences in terms of our introduction to the United States. And I have found that that's as prevalent with other Latinos who make that assumption, right? I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, Latinos have said, "Oh, I thought you were white." Well, yes, and a proud Latino. So we have to remember ourselves, right, and remind ourselves that unless we are comfortable with our skin, we can't expect other cultures and other individuals to be comfortable with our skin.
Luis, yeah, that was great, Luis. And I'm not a business owner, but I working a lot of my career in advertising, right? So, and working at this company is NBC and Telemundo, right? Like our approach is that to reach the entire community in both languages, right? So on that side, these stereotypes kind of like infiltrate their way into the ether, right? And to your point, Luis, it's not just with non-Hispanics, it's within Hispanics, but it goes to show you how kind of pervasive it affects. This is not like an exact example. This is just kind of like this is not a specific example, but like we'll have, for example, a roofing company, right, come to advertise to sell their roofs. And so we offer NBC and Telemundo together, and they're like, we'll just want it. I just want to advertise on NBC, and so like they end up putting commercials selling roofs on NBC, and then a week later or something, that same company will come to buy Telemundo, but they want to do a recruiting campaign to get workers to work at the roofing company, which is actually a very intelligent and smart way to like do that. But then it kind of sends this kind of double message of like, you don't think Hispanics would want to buy your roof, or maybe the stereotype is they can't afford it or they're renters when the data is not true. So I think the way to combat all of this a lot of times is when you get into the information and the data, it clears it up. It starts clearing up. You start seeing the fact that, to your point, Luis, Hispanics are everything, right? They are the people who install the roof, but they're also the people who buy the roof. And they're also the people who might have multiple houses to put roofs on. So it's all together, but the stereotypes a lot of times just seep their way through everything. And in my experience, at least, my best way to combat it is just look at the data and the information to help offset any of those stereotypes.
That was a really good example, Carlos. I didn't even know that myself, that that happened. So really good insight. And Luis, just to go off what you were saying a little bit, I also don't own a business, but stereotypes I have faced coming into Connecticut. I come from New York, so you have everything in New York. You have Salvadorian, Guatemalan, like Mexican, like you have everything. And then coming to Connecticut, the question is Puerto Rican? And I'm like, no, but let me like educate you. Yes, Puerto Ricans are like the leading, population of the Hispanic population in Connecticut, followed by probably Dominican and Mexican, right? But there's also Central Americans, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala. There's a wide variety of us. We're not just one. And even within us, we speak a little differently. We celebrate a little bit differently. We eat different dishes. So I found myself on multiple occasions being like, not Puerto Rican. I can take honorary Puerto Rican, but I'm Salvadorian, and there's a wide range of us. So I think that's a huge stereotype that I've seen. And it's just about having an honest conversation like, hey, all good, but just letting you know, like not every Hispanic person is Puerto Rican.
Right.
That has definitely happened, and I'm from Honduras, so mucho gusta, mi vecina.
Oh, see, I love that.
So, I've gotten that too, where it's like, oh, so you're not Puerto Rican? You're from Honduras, but you speak Spanish. Same thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's not the same thing.
What do you think they speak in Honduras?
But because, and I think because, people just figure, well, you speak Spanish, they speak it here, speak it there. So everyone can just get bunched up into one group. But no, we are our own individual countries. And as you mentioned, we have different foods, there's different music, there's a lot of differences that happen amongst us, even though we're all Latinos, right? But there's differences as you separate us through countries as well. And that has definitely, I can agree with that stereotype 100%.
And I think it goes to businesses too. I think Carlos and I had this conversation when I came on very early, but when we were talking about our backgrounds, I was like, where do I find pupusas? Like for businesses, it's like, where do I find the food that I grew up with eating? In New York, where there's a deli in every corner and you can find a pupusa in every corner. Here I'm like, I have to search for that, and I think that that's something that's important for businesses to note for their customers. There's not just one population that you're serving. You're not just serving the Puerto Rican population, but we are growing, just throughout the years. And I think that's bringing me to my next question. Look at that transition. So changing demographics, what does it mean for you guys today, and in the future?
I think when I moved out here 8 years ago from Florida when NBC bought the Telemundo station here and helped kind of like to launch the sales efforts and stuff like that. And so there's this, and I think within Connecticut and New England, there's this kind of, and across the country, when you think Connecticut, when you think New England, right? You don't think necessarily diversity isn't the first thing that comes to mind, or Hispanics, or that's not the first thing that comes to mind with folks. And the interesting part is when you dig into the census numbers, right? Like currently, Connecticut is about 18% Hispanic. The U.S. is 19% Hispanic, and that's a big deal. And so the Connecticut is just as Hispanic as a whole country. And that's a big, significant thing. And what's even more significant, in my opinion, when we talk about that's today, right? So when we talk and start looking tomorrow, under 18 here in Connecticut, if I grab look at it as just one, right? One population, they're 28% Hispanic. So what does that tell you? That is your voter, that's your home buyer, that's your, every second that goes by, there's going to be more Hispanics. So that affects your workforce, your tax base, if you're selling anything, So even I know that like, even this is the West Hartford Chamber, right? So a lot of people like West Hartford isn't necessarily the bastion of the Hispanic population per se, right? Because West Hartford is 12% Hispanic, so it doesn't seem that way, but West Hartford is 22 miles, I think, square miles. The surrounding neighborhoods are 28% Hispanic. So if you have a business in West Hartford, even then, like reaching out across the street, you have this huge, huge population that's even more than the state. So it's one of those things. I think the importance is it goes across everything: work, workforce, education. That's who's going to be graduating. That's who's going to be, buying products. That's the person. So I think those are important today, right? But even more important every second that goes by, because it's not going the other way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely, I think Carlos probably won this panel discussion with the guy who buys the roof analogy, because it really is so applicable to so many different aspects of life. And I think when we look at how demographics change, something, and this will combine this question and the last question in terms of stereotyping, what does it mean to support a Hispanic-owned business? What is it, the bodega on the corner, or is it the C-suite executive who is in charge of millions of dollars of, roofing or whatever, finances? So I think supporting different businesses as uh, Latinos have been here for generations and much longer as they're becoming much more ingrained parts of society. Uh, Looking at how supporting Hispanic business owners in many regards, I think is going to be really important. Not just looking for the Honduran restaurant on the corner. Like there are many other ways you can support. Like there's very little there's no Honduran representation in my business, even though I was born in Honduras. And yet, if you actually support me, you are supporting a Hispanic business. So it's like, I think not trying to check a box. And I think that this new age, like virtue signaling, like I really want to support, businesses that are BIPOC and all this. People look for, okay, is it a person of color? Is it this? Is it LGBTQ? Like people look for all these different things that they want to check a box, even though that may limit what you're and who you're actually able to support. Because I am no less Hispanic than somebody who owns a restaurant and only speaks Spanish in a Latino community. Like that is very important to remember that these demographics, it doesn't need to be a cluster effect. We can look for where these people are across industries, across roles, across employment, whether they're C-suite or opening positions. That is how you really get down to supporting people, is when you open up your eyes a little bit more, because the demographics are changing with the vast number of Hispanics coming into this country now, yesterday, and generations before, and it's only going to get more the longer we're here.
I am kind of jumping to another question here, but just because of what you're saying, um, as you mentioned, you should be equally supported as a bodega down the street, right? So what does like just support look like to you? Like what does support from the community look like to you?
That's a great question. So support is, in my industry, so in the clothing industry, we have now become desensitized to where clothing comes from. Everybody thinks, okay, if I'm going to add to cart, and ferries are going to bring it in the night, and it's going to be here on my doorstep in 24 hours. And if it's not, I'm going to be really mad, and I'm just going to buy more because I'm really mad now. There are human beings who actually make your clothing. And most of those human beings, especially in this country, are immigrants, are Hispanics, are people from these different countries. So support is not just going up to a business, face value, handing money over and being like, I supported you. When you support me, for example, I have factories in Rochester, Brooklyn, Newark, and in Midtown Manhattan. Most of those are occupied and employed people of Hispanics from all different countries, who then have their own communities that they return to. So supporting me is also supporting the employees who are able to get paid and stimulate their own economies. So seeing that your dollar can have a bigger effect, more than just the Hispanic restaurant that you have heard great things about, that's in New Britain. It can go a little bit further, but still stay local. Opening up what that can be and what that can look like, and maybe thinking of the roofer who employs a number of people, and maybe they're a couple towns down, or the person doing my website right now is from Puerto Rico, and like just little, but like I'm not even thinking about, oh, I'm doing this because she's Puerto Rican. It's just like, oh yeah, this is who that is. I didn't even think about it until like right now, but it's like that's a way to support Hispanic businesses, is just looking beyond what we think might be stereotypical ways of supporting Hispanic businesses, and what an actual job that should be occupied. Like, I remember Trump got in a lot of trouble when he said black jobs, and like they're like whether we're whatever side of the Republican or the political aisle we fall on, we all think in stereotypes. It's just human nature, accepting those flaws in ourselves. It's the only way that we're able to actually move and heal and evolve as people. And just saying, like, oh, yeah, there are actual Hispanics in many other roles in society. How do I look for those? And what are the actual big ripple effects that I can create with my actions and my dollar?
Yeah. I think it's also having organizations that are seeking to do business with, whether it's their supply chain, whether it's goods or services, taking that extra step. And can I get the same thing? Um, if I'm supporting a minority, and I'm going to say minority because it's women owned, it's whatever, but in this instance, certainly Latino or Hispanic businesses. And I think that the political environment, I think we had made a lot of strides in terms of organizations making and advertising when they were seeking a contract or an RFP, putting in, women and minority owned businesses preferred. And now we can't even put that in because as a partially federally funded organization, I'm going to put my funding in jeopardy if I actually seek that in practice. Don't tell anyone, and nobody that's listening here will continue to do it. But how do I attract right people that will know this is a Latino friendly, minority friendly organization that's statewide and could have positive impact on a business owner and their employees. It's a really tough place to be right now.
And I think if he's also another thing, well, one easy one this week, like if you want to support, go to the Puerto Rican parade on Sunday. Okay, like right there, you could just help those businesses, listen to some music,
Yep.
enjoy yourself. So like that's one quick, easy way to support. That's what that looks like. But I think one thing when I came out here, I've noticed that folks in Connecticut kind of like stay in their towns,
Mhm.
right? And I think it'd be great if folks kind of venture out of your town, go to Hartford, go to New Haven, go to Bridgeport, go to Waterbury, go to Willimantic. There's so many incredible like Hispanic neighborhoods and Hispanic festivals, and not lock ourselves in. I've noticed this just like this observationally, right? That people think a Puerto Rican parade is for Puerto Ricans. And it's like it's not. It's for everybody to come, like if it's another type of event, it has a title like a Black Wall Street in New Haven. It's not just for Black, it's for everybody, right? Like so take that step and explore and just because it's not your culture, whatever, doesn't mean it's not appealing, right? Like there's so many things, that we all find appealing. I'm Hispanic. I don't only do Hispanic things, right? Like I find, I think Connecticut's one of these incredible places. You have this Italian population, Polish population, Portuguese. It's like you have the world, and you just like the more you explore and the more you go out. I think that's how you can support whether, like you said, whether it's minority or however you want to title it, but just being exploratory and going out and experiencing and sharing. It'll benefit you because I mean it's just an incredible opportunity to have that. There's a lot of places across the country that don't have this kind of like diversity within it. So it's really you should really take advantage of that and break out of there.
Spreading the word, I think too, like Matthew, like just like if someone needs clothing, now I'm gonna be, I think it's like just spreading the word amongst ourselves, our families, communities, and helping each other and just getting people in the door, for all the businesses. I do want to go to the next question, which is why should we focus on the Hispanic market?
I think that just to give a quick example of how I started, in my business is I remember working for a company and the director there was watching the store across the street. It was a telecommunications company, and he saw people go into the store, leave with phones. He saw people come into our store and ask, ¿Alguien habla español? And then everyone in the store looked at each other like, no, nobody here. And they went across the street and he saw them come out with phones, bags, and everything. And he witnessed people coming back later on with their primos, their tias, somebody else was with them to be able to get phones as well. So that in itself, right, just shows that our impact and our buying power is very, very huge. I think it's like, I don't know, 4 trillion. It's huge, right? So that in itself shows that. And once he saw it and saw what happened, he came knocking into my office like, Margie, I need to bring those bilingual candidates in like ASAP. We need them in. I witnessed this. People were coming into our stores. We were all looking at each other because none of us spoke Spanish. And they went across the street and they came out with bags because guess what? They had Spanish speakers in there. So that impact that we have, the purchase power is huge, 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 huge. And once companies see it, they start to put more attention to it once it hits the pockets, right? Because once it gets to that bottom line, they definitely.
It's so funny you say that the data, and all the marketing data and stuff like that. Hispanics, it's a family thing to go to the store.
Yep.
Like they bring the kids, everyone goes together. So it's like you said, they don't end up that's why they buy more, like they end up buying more things just because, the kid's grabbing something over here, the grandma wants something over here, mom wants this, and we like to call it, instead of the ROI, return on investment, it's called the return of influence, right? Because Hispanics are more likely to refer their friends, their families, and like you said, all of a sudden, cousin, primo, you need a phone. I got a guy, like all of a sudden it just starts to happen. And I think since we're talking to business owners, at the chamber, right, as chamber members, why should you focus on the Hispanic market besides what we were just talking about? But again, the census data, right? In the next 3 years, okay, the non-Hispanic population in Connecticut, it is going to shrink 1%. Okay. The Hispanic population is going to grow 14%. And so when across the United States, 2/3 of consumption is the economy, right? The economy thrives on consumption here. So those are your consumers. That's who's going to be buying the cars. And when you look at anything, any category, it's the same story. So the houses, people with 100K incomes plus, upscale people, all the growth is Hispanic because every category has the same story in the next 5 years, where the non-Hispanic group is going to stay flat or a little uptick, but the Hispanic one is the one that's going to be driving all of this. So I think it's really important as business owners, chamber members, whether it's for your employees or whatever you're going to, or the products you offer, you need to kind of like future-proof your business by engaging with Hispanics now and for the long term. So I think that's the real why, like in this context with business owners at the chamber, right, and chamber members, that's really why you really need to focus on the Hispanic market if you're going to be doing business in Connecticut.
I'd like to add that the environment where you operate your business is just as important, the outside or the external as it is internally. Because if you don't have, as Carlos's initial example of only 12% in West Hartford, but 28% around you, and if those 28% doesn't feel comfortable or safe coming into West Hartford, so it's got to be that partnership with um, City Hall, with the police, with and making sure that there's a financial impact to the town if they don't make the environment safe and welcoming as well.
Yeah, I definitely I like Carlos's point about the over the number of next couple of years, like the number of Hispanics that the population will change by, and kind of going back to my my original point, which is that in all the factories that I work in, they're the ones with the knowledge to do this labor. They have the skill set. Most Americans do not. And so you can, we can now, rather than just relegating a lot of Latinos and Hispanics just to be laborers, they can be empowered to be business owners to then teach these skills. And hopefully it could, I mean, just to speak from the clothing industry, like I said, only 3% of clothing bought in America is made in America. I mean, that could change just by capitalizing on the Hispanic and Latino population that is in these factories, has the skill set, and just empowering them and enriching what they can do and the skill set that they do have could make a very, very powerful change in this massive industry that we call the fashion industry. So just something like that, we can see that ripple effect.
I'm sorry to interrupt because there was a great question that came in on the Q&A that follows this conversation very closely. And I'd like to put it out to the group. So an anonymous attendee stated, I appreciate this conversation from the leader perspective, but I am curious about supporting employees and their growth. As Marjorie mentioned, there's a stereotype around entry-level positions for those who are bilingual. What strategies and supports, or even motivation, would the panelists suggest to empower the Latino community to grow in leadership roles? Would love to hear about your personal journeys.
I'll just say from a personal perspective. Oh, Marjorie, are you talking or? Okay. I'll just say from a personal perspective, it's something I've kind of wondered myself, right? As you're moving up the ladder, as you're moving through your career, sometimes you want to have a mentor who can relate to you a little bit. And I've had that question myself, and I'm posing it to you guys as the anonymous person did too. But I think something that I have learned is networking really helps, like networking within the Hispanic community and beyond as well. Finding people who have gotten to C-suites or something that I hope to achieve and asking them, okay, well, how did you do that? Or how did you get there? And not being afraid to ask questions. I think that's a huge thing that's helped me, just being curious and asking for help. Because as you are moving up, I do think that you need a little bit of help. So I'm posing the question, but also just wanted to chime in that I can relate to that question as well.
Yeah, I
As
think
well, right, Bree, because in addition to the networking comes the asking for that mentorship, right? We want those that are in positions that we want to be in and aspire to be in. We want to be mentored by them. So that is another huge step that we can take and ask that, Matthew, can you mentor me? I want to start a clothing company. What do I need to do? Show me the routes, and get me there, right? So, and that person putting in the action as well, because it's going to be a twofold. It's going to be me asking for it, and I can't just take it without taking action behind it. So, I think the mentorship ask is a huge one as well.
I think one thing that I've definitely seen, and this is across all industries, across all businesses, is not gatekeeping and not pretending like, since this is your business, you're doing all the things. On my social media page, I love posting videos of everybody working on their clothing. I'm not making your clothing. They are. I have no problem saying that. It's my greatest skill set. It is what makes a huge difference between me and all these other clothing companies. And I think really highlighting people, and it doesn't matter what your business is. You could be a roofer, you could be a barista, you could be a insurance agent. It's just highlighting like, hey, these are human beings doing work. We talk about how disconnected our lives are becoming as technology is becoming so prevalent and nobody talks to each other. Okay, well, there's always something negative if you look for it. But just like Hispanics are going to be a much bigger part of the population, we can accept that fact. We can also accept the fact and the role that social media plays. Okay, highlight people, highlight other human beings on social media. Like this didn't exist 20 years ago. I couldn't show pictures of my factory. All it was just a beautiful label. But now I can actually say, like, hey, Bard's Clothing, look at all the people. Here they are. I'm actually about to launch a I Major Clothing campaign where I actually interviewed a bunch of the people in my factories and just like, who are you? Where do you come from? You made this clothing. And thankfully, the camera woman that I brought spoke Spanish and she conducted the whole interview. And I mean, that whole thing just speaks to itself. So I think using social media, using your business platform to highlight the human beings that work for you, with you, and are part of this culture is really what's going to be the game changer for leadership.
I loved
Can
what
I?
you said. Oh, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to piggyback on what Matthew was saying because it is important if you want to support your employees, uh, support all human beings. It's sometimes counterproductive to say that you're going to have incentives for a Latino or Hispanic or any particular group, right? Because what you're creating is an unintended consequence that those who are not eligible are going to feel like they're being slighted. So that's going to affect, right, the not only the morale, but the climate that you want to create. So I know that as margins are getting narrower for businesses because of all of the uncertainty in terms of the economy, et cetera, et cetera. Um, if you really believe it, then you need to make that investment. And there are things like tuition reimbursement that can be modest, but at least helps for people to continue their education. Vocational, it doesn't have to be, just for college. It can be for anything. Certificate programs, right? So that people can then aspire to a higher paying job and so forth leadership trainings internally. So now you're, creating a cohort of leaders to be that look different from each other and can learn from each other in terms of feeling more comfortable as they, then perhaps supervise or manage a diverse group of individuals. So those are just some specific examples that I can think of in terms of the viewer's question. Um, but like that, there's many others that you can do as a business leader or business owner. And by the way, we do that here at Mental Health Connecticut.
Yeah, I think just real quick, I cheated. Okay, so I had a cheat. I started working at Telemundo at a Spanish language network, so it was kind of like Hispanic was baked into the product. But the real learning that we had is when NBC bought Telemundo and we all merged together. It was the company's been great at this, but being able to experience it together, I guess, is the best thing. And at least in a work environment, that like you said, everybody is accepted. Everyone, like that's a good thing. That's a positive thing. And one of the things that I find really interesting, and I think a lot of I think a lot of folks look at young people, meaning anyone under 30 or 40, they're kind of like, wow, they're very different, right? Like they seem very different in their behaviors and everything. And workplaces are challenged. How do I keep these young people engaged, and how do I connect with them, and how do I grow them and whatnot? And one thing that we've found in the data, and again, as a Spanish language network, we're constantly looking at the data for this stuff about population growth and stuff. But if you're under 30 today, you're part of the first generation that is going to be the multicultural majority in the United States. Okay, so that's going to be the first generation in American history where white isn't the majority. It's multicultural. right? It's Hispanic, Asian, it's mixed, right? And so this young generation, it's fascinating to see them because for them, they've grown up this way, right? All their friends are multicultural. Their friends come from all over the place. You know, their friends might be mixed. It might be like Asian and Hispanic. And so they are interesting because everyone thought when this moment came that it was kind of like how when we grew up a little bit, that like, you know, Hispanics are over here, this people are over here. When Hispanics get old enough, they're not going to eat their food. They're going to eat burgers or something. They're going to like assimilate, right? But this young generation is really fascinating because they love each other's they love exploring each other's culture. You see it in everything in media consumption. You know, like on Netflix, the number one show is like Squid Game. It's Korean. It's not even in English. You know, they're watching anime. Bad Bunny's the number one Spotify talent. He's singing in Spanish. He's not singing in English. And this can't be attributed to just Hispanics, right? Like Hispanics, for Bad Bunny to be the number one artist on Spotify, that means every Hispanic has to listen to Bad Bunny 24 hours a day to generate that kind of like, right? It's not. It's this young generation. They're all into each other. They want to learn each other's language, you know. So I think take advantage of that, you know, when you're mentoring, think of it like that. And I think that's because when you accept everybody and make that effort, you know, whether you know it or not, you know, like just making the effort and making it a safe place for everyone to feel included, you'll be surprised because they really like learning from each other and sharing in each other. And I think that that's a great way to, you know, I got to do it because, you know, two forces clashed, right? Like, you know, you had one Spanish language network and an English language network. So it kind of like just happened inside. But I think as an organization, understanding that multicultural majority and how they do things and how they share with each other, if you provide that space for them, I think it's beneficial.
And with Carlos talking about, you know, how important, you know, the impact is, even with like Bad Bunny, right? You're saying like everyone's listening. He's in
Yeah.
Spanish. He's not even coming to the US, you know, he's in Puerto Rico and making his own statement with that. What do you guys think that Connecticut would look like without the contributions of the Hispanic population?
Hmm.
So I I'll talk about my personal experience with how I've seen things change over time, which is I grew up in Farmington. My parents, yeah, there's one thing that like about my life is that I look Indian, my name sounds white, and I was born in Honduras. So nobody really knows what to make of me. I always the ongoing joke with me and my friends and is that when you have to check the box that says what race you are, there should be one that says racially ambiguous, and I would check that. But for me, one thing that I've definitely seen a big shift in is I remember going to school in Farmington and like knowing the black kid, like there was one, you know, and like now it's as Carlos said, you know, it's so much has changed where it's very accepted. I think that there was a swing of overcorrection not even that long ago, maybe 10 years ago, with political correctness and people going overboard with supporting Hispanic businesses or minority businesses or whatever. But I think now it's just an acceptance of Hispanics, Latinos, immigrants from a multitude of countries. They're here. They look different. They sound different from each other. And that's a good thing. And how do I support them in whatever way I can? Which is you don't just have to be restaurant owners. You can also be a C-suite executive, and like looking at where Latinos, where Hispanics, where they actually are, not where we think they are. And I think that that's a really big aspect when we see like what the contributions have been. Are they actually like when I drive by a construction site, the majority of people at those construction sites are like white and black and a lot of young people, which is nice to see. But all on the news, you hear about Hispanics at, construction sites. And I'm like, well, I'm not seeing them, but I am seeing them in places that I go, which is restaurant owners or C-suite executives or banks. They're the manager. So when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at it from just a very open-ended, but also personal view of like, where are people actually, not what I hear on the news. That's my 2 cents.
So, Matthew, what you just said resonates so much for me because I wasn't raised in Farmington, but my family moved to Farmington in 1974. You weren't even born. And imagine what that was like in terms of not only the culture shock. I'm Puerto Rican born of Cuban parents, of Spanish grandparents, right? So, talk about ambiguous in terms of which of one of those ethnicities do I, own. But of course, because people heard that I was moving from Puerto Rico, they assumed Puerto Rican, which is, exactly what Marie was saying before. Um, and the culture shock was not just for me. It was for the community that we moved into because the preconceptions were that um, Puerto Puerto Ricans live on Park Street, and what's your family? How can you even afford to live in Farmington? That was the mentality. So it was. So to answer your question, Brie, I think that the um, development of the Latino community or Hispanic community in Connecticut has been such that we're no longer relegated to the places where the first or second generations lived. Now we're going into other towns, other cities, other socioeconomic levels. And I think that that does help in terms of informing and providing opportunity because with knowledge comes acceptance, hopefully, and understanding. So I see it very different for my nieces, my nephews, than what I experienced or my family experienced. So I think that that's a good outcome.
Yeah, in regards to that, like what would Connecticut look like without the contributions of Hispanics? That was something that really hit me when I moved here. Because again, we're trying to bring Telemundo into the fold. We got to look at the information and the population and where are they and where's our audience and whatnot. So just to paint this picture of like their contribution between 2014 and 2024, during that time span, this is census information. So it's not just me making it up, right? So the non-Hispanic population shrunk by 100,000, like 92,000 people. The Hispanic population in that same period of time grew by 109,000. So why is that significant? Because if you have a state or a town, when you have population decline, that's a loss of the tax base, that's a loss of workforce, that's a loss of economy. So cities, towns that lose population, it's not pretty. The economy takes a really, really big hit. Businesses take a big hit. And we've seen towns like that across the country that when the what do you call it, the factory leaves, right? And then all of a sudden the population leaves, like what happens after? So if it wasn't for that Hispanic growth to kind of offset that loss, we'd be looking at a different situation. Another number that sticks out on a lot of the stuff that we present, it has to do with in Connecticut, the small minority business owner population, Hispanics represent 44% of that. So they're huge in opening businesses and running businesses. And we all know that small businesses are kind of like the life, they create jobs, right? So without having that entrepreneurial spirit, I don't know. And today Hispanics, I think the number, I think it's $7.8 billion of buying power in Connecticut. So it's like a huge, so I think if you didn't have Hispanics in Connecticut, even in the past 10 years, I think Connecticut would be a completely different situation than it is now that, you know, still has challenges, of course, like everywhere else, but much better footing. And this thing with Hispanics growing isn't just here. Springfield, 30 minutes up, you know, 30 minutes up. Springfield's even more Hispanic than Connecticut. And this population growth is happening even in Vermont, Maine, you know, Vermont, Maine, and New Hampshire made the top 10 list in the census of biggest percentage growth amongst Hispanics, which is like, what? Like you would never have thought those three would make the top 10 across of all the, you know, states, all 50 states. So Hispanics are growing, looking for opportunity, moving to wherever the jobs are and wherever the opportunities are. And this region is going to see that growth. So even if you're a very well-established company and you're looking to expand, it's something that you can apply it all across New England.
So much for that data. I feel like it really puts so much into perspective about the Hispanic population growing and how it impacts businesses. So thank you for that. And I want to share also, just jump off a few of the other stories that were shared. I feel like growing up, and I'm sad to admit this, but there was a lot of like almost like it didn't feel accepted or felt ashamed that I was Hispanic because I felt other for a really long time. In school, I knew exactly who the Latino students were, you know? Um, I think there was a shifting point sometime in my adolescence as I was growing up. And I was like, no, this is something to be proud of, you know? This is something to have orgullo over. It's not something to hide. There was points where I was like to my parents, I'm like, can we speak in English? Like, because I was just like, why are we speaking in Spanish? All of my classmates speak English. Why are we speaking in Spanish? Don't pick me up and say hola, Briseida, say hi. Like just I was embarrassed. And I think that to tie this back to how the Hispanic populations, its contributions, and how we're growing, I think as I saw the Hispanic population grow, and as I was growing, and as I saw it being celebrated, and I felt a part of it, I think that's where I like blossomed, I would say. And I think as youth and people under 30, like you said, Carlos, are as everyone's growing up together, my cousins have a completely different experience than I do. They just posted all of themselves in a Salvadorian soccer jerseys for Independence Day, you know, like all of my cousins. And I'm like, I didn't have that growing up. And I think that that's the beautiful thing that we are seeing with the Hispanic population growing over the years. So I just wanted to add that quick story. We are getting short on time. So my last question really quickly in English before I just ask a question in Spanish is, we are celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. So just very quickly, if you guys would say, how do we continue? And we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier with Matthew and his brand and, you know, how do we continue supporting, educating, and celebrating our small businesses and our communities as a whole as the Hispanic population is growing?
Yeah, I'll jump in, which is, you know, to add on to my point earlier, which is just celebrating your workforce, celebrating the people who are doing the work. I think that using the internet to our advantage, which is using social media, celebrating workers that way. I really liked what Lewis talked about, which was that sometimes a good thing can also turn into a negative thing, even though you're trying to be open-minded. There is good intentions don't always have their desired outcome. Just supporting people the best you can. Just try to be a good person. One of the last things I think is so important, which I really want to add on here, is write Google reviews. If it's a business that you like, write a Google review, even if you've, you know, dined with this restaurant 1,000 times and you've never eaten something from them, just like, or never written a review, like write a review. a friend of yours something, those are just little things that you can actually do to support. And really keeping an open mind as to what support looks like, and just reiterating that a Hispanic business does not mean that it's a first generation immigrant who only speaks Spanish and owns a bodega. Like Hispanic business can be somebody who doesn't speak Spanish, can be somebody who's from a different place, can be somebody who's adopted. Like there aren't these boxes to check, which is like how how good how am I doing on the like support for X reason. Just support people based on getting to know them, and that can look like so many different variations. And just that's it. That's the answer. It doesn't have to look like one thing or one way. Staying open to the diversity that this population has.
Yeah, I'd like to highlight the flip side of that. So it's not just about supporting Hispanic businesses. It's also, again, creating opportunities, because you're going to miss out on a great deal of sales or whatever it is if you are not attracting and bringing in the Hispanic community to your place of business. So I think that it has to be both. You certainly don't have to be a Hispanic owner to create an environment like the example with the telephones, right? Where you hire people, so people come into places where they see themselves. Well, it's no different than education, for example. You need to hire a variety of teachers so that you have the richness of the interchange, but also so that the students who look like that one teacher can know that, well, the same thing is in a business, right? And I think that that would go a long way. And it would be a missed business opportunity not to be proactive around that based on the astounding numbers that Carlos has shared with us. And thank you, Carlos, for doing that part of the homework.
Yeah. Oh.
Just continue to come out and support, right? Like Carlos mentioned, just because it's the Puerto Rican Day Parade or what have you, doesn't mean that everyone else can't come out. We'd love to see everyone together, and we'd love to celebrate and have everyone with us. So bring the whole family, and I think that exposing your family, your children, your, aunts, uncles, friends, whomever, to those different cultures and everything is extremely important. So just continue to come out because we're super duper welcoming.
And speaking and language.
Yeah.
That's the one, obviously the Spanish language network guy, of course, is going to talk about language, but so language and culture is not like a binary thing, right? Like it's not like you can't speak English, so you speak Spanish, or you speak Spanish, but you can't speak English. This was something that's really interesting to me too, looking again when we came in. 95% of the people who speak Spanish at home, and this is census data again, so it's not like it's a good sample, right? In Connecticut, 95% of them speak English. Okay. So the Spanish is a choice, right? It's a choice. It's not, because they have to. A lot of us look at life through our own eyes, and sometimes it's like, for example, if I see a Polish TV show, right? For me, since I don't speak it, I'm probably not going to watch it. But that's not necessarily the case in the younger generation. That's not the case with like Hispanics. They speak Spanish. They understand it. They're choosing it. So if you're a business, a way you could support is like, especially, the West Hartford Chamber does a great job with the Minority Business Network and programs like this. But I would urge anyone, whether it's a chamber of commerce or a business, offer material in Spanish. Make an effort to maybe host a networking event in Spanish, not because they can't speak English. It's because it connects them. It brings it together, and those little gestures will go a long way. Long way. Have in your store signage in Spanish. That makes people feel comfortable and safe, and it's a small thing, but it's like just do that. I think that would help support Hispanics and the business community.
Carlos, you teed me up to the next transition here. What a great segue.
Just work good.
I do think that's very important, even at schools. And you say like when you see like welcome and bienvenidos, I feel like I do stories at school and I'm like, oh, I love that they have this in Spanish for the families that are walking in and are bilingual. Um, so speaking of bilingual, we are going to do a little bit here just in Spanish, just one question. Just going to ask you what you thought was the most important part and why, and whoever feels comfortable, and we can also help translate if needed. So la pregunta es, ¿cuál parte fue más importante y por qué? Carlos,
Y
I'm
hombre,
going to you.
sí, ok, bueno, muchas gracias, Briseida. Mira, yo pienso que hoy en la conversación hablamos de muchas cosas importantes y útiles, ¿no? Pero para hablar con los latinos específicamente, ¿qué es importante de esta charla, ¿no? Yo pienso que cuando yo miro los números, yo pienso que el latino debe de saber el poder que tiene aquí en Connecticut. Debe de entender que todo el crecimiento de la población, de los negocios, del dinero, del apoyo político, va a estar en las manos de los latinos. Y una observación, algo que yo he visto aquí en Connecticut es que hay muchas organizaciones latinas y hay muchos grupos latinos, pero están muy separados. Tú sabes, no se hablan, no se juntan, será porque no se conocen o lo que sea. Pero yo pienso que lo que es importante de nuestra conversación es identificar que el futuro de Nueva Inglaterra va a estar en las manos de los latinos. Y lo que deben de hacer es tratar de ayudar los latinos que se unen con organizaciones, si necesita, si son eventos con... Y hay muchos recursos las cámaras de comercio que son gratis, pero están en inglés, ¿no? Pues trata de integrarte a las cámaras de comercio, junta, si hay una organización que tú haces algo para los latinos y tú ves que hay otra, por ejemplo, en New Haven o algún lugar, haga esas conexiones, porque la realidad es que para tomar la ventaja de todo lo que va a comenzar aquí en los próximos 20 años, para de verdad tomar ese poder en nuestras manos, tenemos que trabajar juntos y tenemos que ayudarnos y crear y crecer este mercado juntos, ¿no? Entonces yo pienso que eso es algo que yo pienso es importante de todo lo que hemos hablado.
Antes que alguien más tarde quiero decir en inglés lo que Carlos dijo. So I'll say really quickly in English what Carlos said. I'm paraphrasing here, but this is how I summarized it. Together, we are stronger as Latinos. The data shows that we have a lot of power, purchasing power, but just power in general, and making sure that the different countries that are represented within Connecticut, we unite as Latinos. If there are different Latino organizations, there are different resources, make sure you are reaching out to them, joining them, accessing them, and building the community up all together. So that's the summary of Carlos. But now back to Spanish, if anyone else would like to say something about what was most important and why.
Pues para mí lo más importante fue el intercambio de que no debemos de asumir que todos somos iguales y asegurarnos como dueños de negocios. Tiene que pensar a quién usted quiere atraer a que sea eh, la persona que viene a usar sus servicios o lo que sea el del negocio. Y para mí eso es importante porque si no se realiza esa parte, entonces la gente no va del lado de negocios, no van a estar usando, oyendo a su tienda a su bodega, restaurante, lo que sea. Y igualmente para los dueños de negocios latinos, tienen que también atraer otras nacionalidades y otras para que haya más eh, 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 para que estén más expuestos a lo que está y lo que se ofrece por el lado de los negociantes latinos.
Was good. So, Luis said that we shouldn't assume we are all the same, and I think we all kind of agreed on that and shared our own experiences about, we're not just one. Latinos are not just one. There's an umbrella, business owners being aware of who you are attracting, but also at the same time reaching out to other nationalities and attracting a wide variety of nationalities. I believe outside of Hispanic too. You're saying, yeah, yeah. So and I think that goes to just serving your community as a whole, like the data that, Carlos was talking about, like West Hartford might be this, but what are the neighboring communities looking like when you're looking at other nationalities as well? So thank you, Luis. Did anyone else, alguien más quería decir algo?
So, lo que yo saqué de todo esto es que los jóvenes también son muy importantes. Si los jóvenes quieren aprender español, quieren ir a diferentes eventos, llévenlos para que aprendan, para que miren la cultura, y para que ellos sigan ayudándolos a crecer durante el futuro. So, eso es lo que yo saqué de esto muy bien.
Me encanta. I love that. Um, Marjorie said that just don't forget, young people are important. Again, Carlos, I'm just referencing to all your data. Like, but anyone under the age of 30, again, you're looking at, what was the term multicultural
Majority.
majority? There we go, majority. So think of the young people. If they want to learn the language, help them learn the language. If they want to see what the culture is about, again, Puerto Rican parade on Sunday, like expose them to that, expose them to what is out there. If they like Squid Games, like, there's just a bunch of different things, and you don't have to be to celebrate. You don't have to be to enjoy, and you don't have to be to learn. So I will leave it on that note. Thank you guys so much. And before we do go, I want to just toss it back to Chris to just wrap up and see if you had any final comments on this great discussion. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's been a pleasure getting to know you guys and hear from you, and just incredible conversation. And connect with me on LinkedIn as we're talking about connections and stuff. So, and Facebook and Instagram, find me, I'll find you, as we're talking about making those connections. Thank you guys.
So, as I'm sitting here listening to this, there are so many analogous, experiences and just powerful bits of information that you all shared. So thank you. Bree, Carlos, Luis, Marjorie, Matt, gracias por todo. Please pardon my pronunciation. Thank you for everything. But the learning doesn't stop here, right? So we have some additional information. We encourage you to keep exploring, to find some of the resources that were discussed during this conversation. I believe there will be a URL put up and a QR code. Oh, there we go. So we invite you to connect and to research. And I think the major linking point of this conversation is, you do not have to be a part of a community to support a community or to enjoy a community, right? And I just, it's very rare that I'm speechless, and I'm finding myself like just absorbing everything that you guys have said and going, wow, there's so much more to learn and there's so much more to do. And I encourage you all to join us in getting it done. So with that, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to our panelists. Bree, thank you for moderating and joining us. And once again, thank you to Senator Blumenthal's office for their kind words to kick us off. Have a great day, everybody.
Hey, everyone. Thank you.
Hispanic Heritage Month.
Happy Hispanic Heritage Month.
Bye, guys.